At this time, we'll call to order the regular meeting of Plan Commission. This is March 27th, 2023. Kelly, roll please.
Mayor Boyd.
I'm here.
Citizen Member Bush.
Here.
Alderperson Carpenter.
Here.
Citizen Member Higgins. Alderperson Rash.
Here.
Citizen Member Raymaker. Citizen Member Schilling.
Here.
Very good, thank you. Item 2, approval of the minutes of the February 27th, 2023 Plan Commission meeting. I make a motion to approve.
A second.
Motion by me, seconded by Dean. Any discussion? Appears there is none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 3, public comment upon matters not on the agenda. Comments made during the public comment period.
Mayor.
Is your mic on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, Mike's on.
Are you getting it?
It just sounds really low.
I'm loud.
She's saying speak up.
Oh, me, speak up. All right, we'll go louder then. And they always tell me that I'm talking too loud.
Never heard that before.
You have heard that. Item 3, public comment upon matters not on the agenda. Comments made during the public comment period shall pertain only to matters under the jurisdiction of the Plan Commission. Anyone in person or virtually have any public comment upon matters not on the agenda? You're here for agenda stuff, correct? Thank you. Virtually anyone out there for the second time have any public comments upon matters not on the agenda? For the third and final time, any public comments upon matters not on the agenda, please state your name right now. Here's none. Item 4, consideration and possible action on a one-lot CSM at 367 Lansdowne Street, Parcel WD-2293. Dan.
Thank you, Mayor. The item in front of you tonight, it looks very similar to some areas that you've seen in the past. This was part of Waterview Heights 5th edition. It was platted and dedicated to the public at the time. It was a dedication for a public park. However, in order to prepare for us to have a Parks Department put some future equipment on that facility, we felt it was prudent that it was no longer an outlot, but an actual lot. Outlots typically can't have structures on them, and they're meant to be undeveloped areas. So by switching this from a outlot to a lot, we've offered the opportunity for Parks Department to make the improvements when necessary as that part of that subdivision progresses. So with that, planning staff is recommending approval of this one lot CSM.
Thank you very much. Comments, questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation approve this based on staff recommendations.
I'll second.
Motion by Dean, seconded by Brenda for the certified survey map. Any additional discussion and or comments? It appears there is none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 5, consideration and possible action on a 35 lot and 5 outlot final plat of the Kingston Preserve at 2000 Lawrence Drive, parcels WD-D0034, WD-D0034-1, WD-D0034-2, WD-D0034-3, and WD-0035. Dan.
Thank you, Mayor. Another item that has come before you several times, and your opportunity for the final plat recommendation is now. So this is phase 1 of the Kingston Preserve. You've seen it as a larger subdivision, but this is just phase 1. So previously, the preliminary plat showed both phases. Per state statutes, they only have to come in for the final plat as the phase that is most appropriate. We're working with the engineering department to finalize all the bids requires for the road construction, and therefore we are looking for the final plat approval for the Kingston Preserve. Important points to note about this one is there is, out of all the effort that we try to do to make the zoning code perfect for everybody, we try to almost fit it to this project here. So as we look forward tonight, all but one lot meets everything of our new zoning code. So it's kind of an interesting point. This is almost like a case study of how our new zoning code was a little bit more flexible. So with that being said, as we move forward with recommendations to subject to staff comments, you'll see that there's some comments provided there. A lot of them are technical in nature, and so it's primarily engineering comments and planning comments of technical in nature. But one piece that we potentially would like to add tonight is also the recommendation from the Plan Commission for a subdivision modification or subdivision variance for Lot 21 to be under the 45-foot lot minimum. a lot width minimum. And the reason for that is our whole goal with the new zoning code is to eventually get rid of as many of our planned development overlays as possible. And if this one just sits out here for one lot, it's an opportunity for us to remove that PDD, allow the underlying zoning district to do its work with a subdivision variance allowed under Chapter 46. So with that, planning staff would recommend approval subject to staff comments, in addition to the one comment of a subdivision variance or modification for lot 21 for minimum lot width.
Which number is that on the?
This one right here.
corner?
It's actually one of the
I know
largest.
it's, I know it's 21, but which of the staff recommendation, you've got all the numbers and stuff underneath? Is it one of those numbers specific?
No, it's not in one of those
Okay.
numbers. So
All right.
it's an additional comment.
Okay.
So it's lot 21, which ironically is the biggest lot. So it has the most buildable area, but because it's at a cul-de-sac, those frontages on cul-de-sacs tend to be the smallest because they fan out as they get further away. So there's plenty of buildable space. It's just an opportunity for lot width, and that's the reason why.
Very good. Another impressive subdivision. Other comments and/or questions, Dean?
So just to be clear, because when you said that, this kind of confused me a little bit, thinking where that sits there. So the actual frontage on the cul-de-sac is a part that's just less than.
Yep. Yeah, we
Okay.
require a 45-foot minimum width is the smallest we go down to. This one's 41.
Okay. I know it's hard to tell ratio-wise, but 22 and 20 are roughly the same, but I know I'm.
They're roughly the
right.
same, but we went through the curve table. That's
Okay.
where you typically find all those measurements in, and that's
Yeah.
the only one that deviates from that 45.
Okay, so it just looked odd when you said 21. But that's
I know.
the biggest lot there, so. Okay, that makes sense to me now. Thanks.
Other comments and/or questions? Everyone's aware where this is. Grant?
Yes, I am. I'm wondering, what kind of verbiage are you looking for, Dan, in terms of, so someone makes a motion to approve it, subject to staff recommendations and,
And subdivision modification / variance, it's listed both ways in our code, for minimum lot width on lot 21.
Grant, is that what you're going to go with? based
I
on
was
staff?
trying to get there, but I didn't. Yes.
So then you would say, Kelly,
Ditto.
did you get that?
Kelly, did you get that?
I'll second that, Kelly.
And is
Read
that now
back.
your motion?
I would like that to be my motion. Does that work?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion by Grant,
Takes a
seconded
village.
by Dean, with
Kelly,
the
could you
assumption
read
that
back
Kelly gathered all of
If
that.
you could read back the motion, that would be great.
Okay, so Grant is approving, or
I can do it if you would like, Kelly.
I think I got it. He's approving the
Final plat.
final plat with the conditions in the report, as well as a request for a subdivision variance for minimum lot width of 41 feet.
Oh, you can just say subdivision, a variance from the minimum lot width for lot
For
21.
lot 21.
That's exactly what I said.
You did have it.
That's what I seconded. Yeah,
Very clear.
yeah, we're good.
Any other questions and/or comments or snarky remarks? Nothing, huh? Well done, Kelly, by the way.
Thank you, Kelly.
Seeing there is none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 6. Consideration and possible action on a major design exception from Zoning Ordinance Section 14-91, Table 9-2, to allow flash dryers to be exposed without metal facade screening on a rear facade at 1751 West Matthew Drive, Parcel WD-288. Dan?
Thank you, Mayor. The item in front of you tonight is a design exception. So it's our second design exception of the year. Previous one was downtown. This design exception is for our business parks and specifically related to the materials for a building or structure. Typically, even in our old code, a silos or dryers or anything of this nature typically would have been required. Unfortunately, that oftentimes wasn't implemented that way as it probably should have been. But over the past, I would say, since my predecessor's time, that standard has been in play. So at this time, the applicant, who I believe is online tonight, is proposing to screen the majority of the cooling tower structure as appropriate, or drying tower, I should say, as appropriate. But there are some elements that, due to its sort of complex nature of what it is, need to be exposed to more air. And so as a result, they are proposing to move forward tonight. I believe there's some renderings here. Move forward tonight with some, I guess you would say, semi-screening of those facilities. As we look forward to, or as we look on the screen, on the right side image that we see, this cooling tower here, or the drying tower, I should say, that we see is pretty much screened, and it's got a semi-permeable metal material, so it allows airflow to continue through it. The lower part is completely screened. As we move over to the left side of the image, or the west or the east side of the site, again, some of the tower is contained, but the part of the tower that is proposed to be exposed is listed there. And then, so from some graphic image that you see, you can see roughly where the facility is. Does it match with the rough area? You can kind of take a look at the site if you did drive that area, if you know that area, and you can tell that it is an industrial user there. The applicant also did provide an additional piece of information here for you tonight, which is just a little bit of a background and the reason for the design exception. So with that, planning staff doesn't make design recommendations or recommendations for design exceptions. It's completely up to the Plan Commission's discretion. We just provide the information and make sure that the applicant has provided all those pieces of information for the Plan Commission. So with that, the applicant is requesting that design exception, and you can see their statement in that background piece of information. And I believe that, as I mentioned, the applicant representative is on the line tonight.
Okay, so we have questions of the applicant. You may wish to open if you want. How are we doing here, everybody? So it's up to us to make that decision. I mean, your comfort level is, without making a recommendation, it's not that out of the ordinary.
Not out of the ordinary. They also provided additional screening on the base for the majority of the larger mechanicals. So they've done a pretty good effort, I would say, of doing what they can with the equipment that they have. A little bit of background information: this equipment is actually being relocated from another facility to De Pere, and so as a result, it's not just a open the box type fresh. It's a retrofit of some very specific equipment that's being brought forward towards the site. And if you know anything about Sustaina Fiber here, they're a very unique operation in what they do in their recycling. So it typically tends to have a very unique equipment.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, recycling portion-wise, that's fantastic. Questions or comments?
I believe, as I understand it, they're one of the only food-grade recyclable companies in the country.
Really?
Yeah.
I believe they're one of only 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Grant, did you have something?
I do have a question. So if I'm reading between the lines here, are they not maybe being as specific that the reason that they don't want to screen everything is because of the superheated air and there's a safety component to it?
That's part of it, yes.
Okay.
So they're doing what they can. They've gone a long way to what we see here from what was first presented to us. So,
Dean.
So I believe you said they're online, but if I understand correctly, so the old plant, that when these two companies merged, Fox River Fiber and they merged, the process they had here was very different, I believe. At the time, it was more of a pressing.
Mm-hmm.
So the moisture content was a lot higher back then. This is a way to kind of keep this food grade thing going. They're bringing this in, but same thing as Grant's question, which is if they screen this in, that affects the ability to heat and cool it to a point where, or to dry it, I should say, and then cool it off. So it's going to lose some of their properties. Mm-hmm. Is that the impact of it being helped to be food grade versus not food grade? That's
a question, but as far as I understand it, the equipment as designed is exposed because of that higher temperatures.
Of that higher heat? Okay.
How it impacts their overall operations, that's a question more for the applicant here.
And I think the part that I didn't quite get with these pictures here is potential visibility from where it's sitting on the building. And if I'm looking, so that's going to be in the back corner, because the front of the building is coming off of Matthews. So that's going to sit in the back corner.
Somewhere around just sort of.
So if you take the one with the truck and trailers on this one, it'll be straight back from that on the left side, right?
Yep.
Would be the first one, the other one will be behind the corner then.
Yeah, so if you see that these towers are the containment towers right here.
Right.
If you go back to that image, those are roughly right here. You're looking sort of at that image. So
Okay.
there's already a taller structure there that has exposed equipment. So
Okay.
yep.
Other questions or comments?
Yeah, I don't have any problem with it.
No, I don't
Just-
either. Dan, go ahead.
I mean, it just contradicts a little bit when a package, they said for cooling reasons and they can't get it cooled, and then in the thing they send us, it's about cost.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, that's what it comes down to, though, is if you end up having to bring in a whole nother unit because you can't get as much cooling done with the equipment that you have, that means it comes into another piece of equipment,
Okay.
stuff like that.
And this, by the way, you got in later today, correct?
Yep.
Yes. Other questions or comments? Again, I have no problem with it as well, so I'd make a motion because it's up to us,
Yeah, I'll
to
second.
make a recommendation for a major design exception for this particular.
I'll second that.
Okay, a motion by me, seconded by Dean, for a design exception. Any additional comments and/or questions? Seeing there is none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. What are we on, 7? Consideration and possible action to repeal and reenact the final draft floodplain zoning ordinance, Municipal Code Chapter 16. Dan?
All right. So this is, we saw this at the last Plan Commission meeting, so that was our overview. So this is our actual formal recommendation to for the recommended changes that are coming as a requirement from the state. We try to structure this very similar to our zoning ordinance, so that way it looks relatively similar, and hopefully we can force all of our other ordinances that way. But in short, the procedures, the general requirements, and all those that are in front of you here tonight are pretty much a recommendation from working with the DNR as well as working with our city attorney. Interestingly enough, I believe Peter has done a great job working with the staff at the DNR office, because they're actually taking some of what were our recommendations and moving them forward for their recommendations. So we took a very fine-tooth comb to their requirements, and so as a result, made some tweaks, and they agreed with those changes. And so that was what you saw last month, but in short, nothing's really changed from the last draft that you saw, and we're looking for a recommendation to move forward with the proposed changes to the floodplain ordinance.
Very good, thank you. So another look at it for us. Questions or comments? I would make a recommendation that the Common Council repeal and reenact the existing floodplain zoning ordinance with the new final draft floodplain zoning ordinance.
Second.
Motion by me, seconded by Dan. Any additional discussion and/or comments? Seeing there is none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 8, consideration and possible action to recommend revisions and updates to the Common Council for the zoning ordinance and the official zoning map. Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's 2 items up for here tonight, which is to go through some of the proposed changes in the actual text and then proposed changes to the map. As you know, the zoning ordinance took about 4 years to do, with a sort of world event happening somewhere in between there. It's been about 4 years in the process, and we knew that there was going to be some growing pains. And it wasn't until literally day 3 after its enactment on January 1 where we had our first somebody calling saying, was this really what you wanted to do here? And so we knew that there was going to be some questions. And you can never take one entire zoning code and fit everybody in the community. There's always going to be some growing pains to it. So with that one, we've gone through it over these first 3 months of its use, and gone through what we've now standardized as a process for analyzing the code. And so in front of you tonight are a variety of recommended changes. Some of them are Scribner errors, which we could have just adopted just by themselves without anybody moving forward. But we did want to bring them forward because we are making one wholesale adjustment. We'll also be looking at a couple zoning ordinance revisions to the actual text, and then the map as recommended by by an interested party at the council approval meeting. So in total, we have about 17 Scribner errors. And sometimes when you see a large number here, it's just because it's kind of replicated in those tables a couple different times, and so it may look worse than what it is. So we have a couple typos, word clarifications, where it typically wouldn't change the regulations, but we still wanted to bring them forward. And then it's also, the reason why we wanted to do that was so we can just track all these changes. Our goal throughout this code is to actually track every change that we do, and so these are being tracked as we continue to move forward. So I can go through those specifically if you like, but I figure we probably just want to jump over those. On the next couple slides here, you'll see about 5 different topics on each slide. The one's in red, so you see 2 of them on this slide, and then there's one later. I actually want to have sort of a policy discussion with the Plan Commission because it gets to some very specifics about some of our older neighborhoods, as well as a proposed use that has popped up several times through, over the past couple years. And we've never really had clarification on that use. And as people continue to recommend it, I want to bring that forward. So we've had a couple questions from people who are in the older neighborhoods, specifically the older neighborhoods that aren't a typical grid line street. We typically get that on our northeast side, the Randall Avenue sort of area, stuff like that. We've had where a lot may be an 80-foot wide lot, but because of how it was built and combined with another lot, it's on a lot line, on a property line. And there's quite a few of those, actually. So even though we attempted to find people the right zoning district from a lot width standpoint, it's actually more appropriate in some of those areas to be a lot setback standpoint because of just how they confront with their neighbors and how they work with their neighbors in the other piece. So we'll be kind of showing that. So a voluntary replacement is also another opportunity to discuss that. So there's a couple different ways that communities handle those replacements of existing structures that may be considered non-conforming. Some communities may just put a blanket, you know what, if it was approved at one point, we understand it's historic or it's an older neighborhood, just repair it as is, as long as you don't expand the footprint. Ours didn't do that. Ours, you're allowed to expand the footprint as long as you expand it or change it inside of the actual established setback. But if you're in the non-conforming piece, if you voluntarily take out a non-conforming use, you voluntarily took it out, you no longer have your non-conforming use. It becomes a bit of a problem if somebody wants to reuse a slab. You reuse a garage slab or something else like that. If they're 1 foot off or 2 feet off or 3 feet off and it's below that setback, it's a bit of a challenge. So some communities, not too many, look for if it's in a certain smaller lot size or smaller historic area, we'll allow the voluntary replacement so that way those areas can be maintained and they're not losing their area. And the reason why that's important is a lot of people in these older neighborhoods have a driveway that's preset, drive straight into it, and you drive into the garage, and all of a sudden if you now have to move that garage over 6 feet, the driveway no longer lines up and it really kind of creates a bit of a havoc. So there's that opportunity if we want to look at that. And the second one, I'll kind of lump them together, is we used to have a spot in our code that allowed for the averaging of setbacks. So when you have these older neighborhoods, we used to allow the people to do a average of 30% of the homes in the neighborhood that you liked that kind of fit your target, and then you could say, I want to apply to that setback. It's sort of a calculated measure that has to be done, but it's we removed that out of this because we gave so much more flexibility in the other zoning districts. So we look at this one, is there an opportunity to say, are one of these two things more appropriate than the other? And so from a policy standpoint, those are the discussion points that I'd like to have first before I go on to the next couple on this slide. So
Okay. You guys digest all that, Dean?
So
Yeah.
I guess I've actually got a situation going on right now with one of my residents who I talked to Peter about it, and actually Peter thinks it's within the new zoning code, everything should be okay, but I'm still waiting for our building inspector to respond to me because the request for this resident is to take an existing structure and actually just expand it backwards. And what that individual's been told is, no, you'd have to take the new structure that's going to be combined with this one and move it over 2 feet, which now you have a garage stall and then a garage stall. Well, that doesn't make any sense. And if we look at the way this is kind of written, I believe he is a 7.5 foot setback right now, but in his zoned house, it's actually been reduced to 6 feet, so he should be compliant, but I think our building inspector might not have the...
Well, that one...
Are you familiar with this?
Yeah, I am familiar with it. And when it came up to Peter and I's radar, it was the first time we have heard of it. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that individual spoke to Dennis, our building inspector, before the new code change.
See,
or
that's
after.
what we're trying to figure out,
Yeah.
but I haven't got a response back from Dennis yet, so I don't know where this stands. And I know he was on vacation for
Yep.
almost all of last week, I believe.
Yep,
So.
and the week before.
Right.
So
So I know that he's probably just coming back. But I don't know. But I look at, that's an older structure. Then it's a World War II house.
Yep.
Dad and brother built it, I think, back in the day, or dad and uncle, I should say. But this is one of those where it becomes an odd situation for people who want to do something new, or make it better, make it nicer, change something to upgrade it, whatever it is, that our code kind of potentially, I think he's okay here, but I think potentially for other people.
It may be if somebody, in
rough
this case,
spot.
you see the fourth line down there. If it's an accessory building, and I don't remember if that one was accessory or attached. I don't.
Well, that's the curiousness of the definition, because he does have a connection between the house and the current structure, but it's not like it's a separate building.
It's like a
attached.
breezeway type thing.
It's not like a breezeway itself, because it's open on both sides, but it has a roof structure that's connected to the garage. So it looks from an aerial image that, yes, they're connected buildings, so it's not an accessory. And so that's kind of the catch right now that we need to find.
Yep.
But that's where I think some of this stuff is.
I believe that's
gray.
the example you're referencing. I believe is a R1 or R260 district.
Yep.
And therefore it would be a 6-foot setback.
Yeah.
And so I believe the
As
example
an
you're
accessory
providing
building, or as
attached.
an attached, yeah.
Yep.
But as an accessory, it would be
As an accessory, we're also proposing all districts to be 4 feet. So as an accessory building, detached accessory would be 4 feet, attached would be 6 feet in an R60, R1
okay,
or
so he
R2.
would still be fine either.
He would most likely be fine. And Peter, and that was our take on that one as well
Okay.
when we first saw it. But again,
Yeah.
we hadn't. It was our first time here.
I think he'd been trying to talk to Dennis, and Dennis was telling him it was 10 foot, so he had to shift over 2.5 feet to make this work. But I can see where these questions are coming up, especially when we get into some of the non-conforming structures where they took 2 lots, which they did a lot of, and combined, and now you're sitting on the property line, and are you?
Yeah. There's other challenges that your neighbor also comes in play, because if there's a lot, or if there's a structure that's closer than 10 feet, then there's firewall ratings that have to all come in play. So there's more things that are just on your lot that impact you. It's also what is immediately around you in some of those older neighborhoods.
Unfortunately for this property, the neighbor is the parking lot for a bank, so
Oh, there you go.
we're good there. But I guess, for me, just having a little bit of conversation with a resident on this, it got a little cloudy to me,
And that's the reason why on there we wanted to have a discussion about the
cloudy to us when they.
Yeah. R145s and R245s and the 60s. We didn't want to go all the way up to the 80s, because at that point you have enough space typically on your lot, versus those smaller lots, which are our older neighborhoods. And so we have a lot of homes that are the homes are 2 feet off the line, or the driveway and carport or detached accessory structure are a foot and a half, just enough to give them enough maintenance on one side. Or they could be, driveway right up to the lot line. So, there's a variety of those situations that happen in those older neighborhoods. So again, do we look at an allowance of average of setback, in which planning staff would likely recommend everybody within 300 feet of the lot take a look at what their averages are, and then you kind of throw out the ones that are people who have bought multiple parcels, and then they split. You sort of eliminate those larger anomalies, so that way you're not being a detriment to everybody, but you're trying to take a look at what are the majority of the standard in that neighborhood. Or do you also, like I said, the first line there, which is the voluntary replacement of nonconformities. The whole purpose of nonconformities is eventually to get rid of nonconformities, but in some cases, when you're trying to maintain character, you're trying to maintain your character.
So what do you guys think of all that? Answer any of your questions, or?
It could either be 1, 2, or neither, or both. We could start to look at providing as much flexibility, but as I've always said, when you provide flexibility, you provide complexity. So,
Dan, quick question on the voluntary replacement of non-conforming. I mean, what do you? There's no enforcement of it. So they decide they want to replace it. We just allow it? Is that?
yeah, they would come in for a
that's it?
permit. They would come in, do everything. They would do everything like they would for a new build, but we're allowing them to be where it was.
Where it was, okay.
Yep. So that way they're not having to tear up a slab if they don't need to, or reconfigure a driveway location. It's not an easy situation, trust me. There's no silver bullet to.
Does that get better defined? Because I look at voluntary replacement of non-conforming. I mean, could they take the slab out and start all over right there? Is that still the same?
No, I would say they've, that's where we can define it later in the text, but I would say as soon as you started to take out your driveway and your slab, I would say as we've classified it before, as you're taking your driveway opening, that's really where we're doing, unless we want people to remove a whole driveway. But again, in a lot of those older neighborhoods, you literally have a 30-foot wide home, 35-foot wide home, setback on one side, driveway, and a small setback on it. There really is no movement of that driveway. So it's allowing for the more or less where the driveway is to lead the design. Now, if it's a shed or something, that's a little bit different of a nature. We're trying to look for the people that are utilizing their structured for storage as well as for the garage. A shed that can be moved is different than a garage.
I mean, honestly, you guys are on the ground, so we want to make your job as easy.
So
as
are
possible.
you preferring to go with the along average setbacks, Dan? I mean,
like I said, there's 4 ways you can go. You can say we'd like to have both of these flexibilities in there. We'd like to have none, or we'd like to have one versus the other one. I've worked in communities that have allowed the average setback, and it's worked just fine. It typically just requires more math on the applicant's part to do that work, and then we check it. The harder part is when somebody says, do the math for me, and then now we're doing their application for them, which can
But
be
you
the
can
case.
spell it out that they have to do it that way.
Yes.
Though. Yeah.
So I would say it's not going to be a hard one way or the other. If we're trying to provide flexibility to our existing residents, you probably want to take a look at both of them, both opportunities. Our previous code said 30% of the parcel, 30% of the lots within 100 feet on one side of a block. Well, when you have a small block, that's one home. That's one home. That doesn't really get to your character of your neighborhood. That's why Peter and I were looking at, we have the DIME tool available to us that has a buffer radius on it. Select all properties within 300 feet, which is our typical actually notification radius that we do here. So we try to keep it the same and do the average of all homes that are within, plus or minus 15% of the average. Like I said, you don't want to get the outliers who somebody's bought 2 lots and they put it right in the middle and then they have 30-foot wide setbacks. That skews your character of your neighborhood. So you have to have some caveats in there. So.
All right, folks. What do you think, Grant? You look like you want to say something.
I'm just trying to figure it out.
Trust me, it's
I feel like I'm leaning to both because I feel like if we offer provide one but not the other, then trying to explain the rationale about why we didn't,
Right.
I feel like
I agree with Brenda.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of that way too, and I think their comfort level's okay with that too.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is a lot to digest.
It's a lot.
yeah.
It's been a lot to digest.
And
for 4 years.
the most important one is they're going to be the caveat on both of them that you do have to comply with the building code. So if there is separation distances still, there's going to have to be firewalls and all those things. So
Yeah.
there are protections that are there. So
Good by me. You guys okay with that?
Yep. Well, one more question. When you
Dean?
look at, you keep talking about firewalls. So if we get properties that get so one neighbor decides to get too close and they're allowed to based on how we do this, does that affect the other property owner having to do something different on their side?
no, because it's an existing structure.
Oh, okay. So
so
just the one that.
If you construct new and you're within that 10-foot separation distance, the building inspection department is going to make sure that you have the appropriate rated wall.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's on the
Might be
onus of the
clear.
person putting stuff
So
up
you
there.
can't impact your neighbor on this.
Yep.
Aside from getting crowded.
Yep.
Very good.
Throwing your grass clippings against their wall.
Which happens. What else do you need from us?
That's on those 2 things. So I think we're past that one. So I think Peter and I, who we do have the sort of recommendation to move forward on those ones. So as we move forward tonight, we'll just make sure to specify those 2 things first. The other changes I'll try to go through here, R145, R245. We noticed that likely for new structures, interior side yard probably should have went down to 4 because we went for 80-foot wide. We were 8 foot. For 60-foot wide, we were 6 foot. And for 45-foot wide, we were supposed to go down to 4 foot wide for our principal structures. So that's, I guess you would say, technically a policy change, but it was one that we felt was appropriate for new structures.
Okay.
Okay. Accessory buildings in all those residential districts, 4-foot interior side yard and rear yard setback, and then a building height of 20 feet. We just noticed in 2 of the districts, it was different from the others, and it was meant to go across the board. So again, trying to fix that one. We also noticed that in the semi-detached house and 2-unit houses, the requirement for rear access. Well, what happens if we don't provide rear access because we didn't allow an alley or we didn't allow something? We have to provide them access at some point. So the requirement would be to allow front-facing garage access when there is no rear access available. So as we try to implement more of these smaller subdivisions, well, what happens if they have a private alley or a public alley or however it moves forward? If they don't have rear access, we do need to provide it for them or have them the opportunity. All right. C, RM1, RM2 allow more than one building, one multi-unit building per lot. Again, it was one of those things where it just wasn't specified or wasn't clarified enough. So allowing for that that piece. Moving on to our backyard cottages, where we talked about maximum square footage. Well, we allow for 850 square feet for an accessory structure, and we allow for 650 square feet for a backyard cottage. Well, the whole purpose of that one was to be no more than 850, but it wasn't clear enough. So we could see somebody coming in here asking for a detached garage and then a backyard cottage, and now we've completely blown past the maximum requirement. So in this case, we're allowing for them to have the backyard cottage and the accessory structure as long as the overall footprint of both of those things isn't more than the maximum accessory structure. So your backyard cottage would typically be your carriage house on top of your garage type thing. So, all right. All right, MX1 and GX1, we had a opportunity to look at our step backs, not step back, a step back above the third floor. So what that means is as we try not to create that canyon effect in our downtown, we want to make sure that we step back as we get a little taller. What we saw was the number that came in from the consultant was 12 feet. So we went with that one. However, when we took a look at that, when you get into your downtown, 12 feet is a big step back. That's a big patio on that whatever floor that is, but it also takes up a lot of buildable space. Prime example of that one is 102 North Broadway, the five-story apartment building. That has a step back at the fourth level. That step back is 8 feet, and it feels a very comfortable level for us. So what we have here is we actually have it proposed to go to 10 feet, but because the design exceptions that are there in the code already, we as staff can actually go down to 9 feet. And so we're sort of giving them an opportunity that we'd like to see 10 because it helps preserve our downtown a little bit. If they want to go back down to another foot, we can do a minor design exception for a 9-foot step back. So it gives us kind of the preferred and the what's allowable.
And that's from when you say from the street. So is that from the curb to where that step back starts, or is it from the
building
itself?
We've interpreted it because we sort of wrote it from the curb, because if somebody already sets their building back 5 feet,
right,
we're already back further away from it.
They only need 5 feet on the next
exactly
that setback on the building.
Yep.
Okay.
We do encourage up to the property line in our downtown, but in our GX1 districts where it's a little bit on the periphery of our downtown, we have a little bit more flexibility there.
Okay.
All right, MX3, corrected driveway separation distance to match a different part of the code. I guess you call that one a Scribner error or matching error, but clarification there. A big sort of is we changed the B1 and B2. All the standards are appropriate, but if you just read the descriptions of what B1 and B2 is, they're reversed. So it doesn't change anything, but it just sort of looks funny when you kind of talk
You guys
about
just like read this every day and go through it again. It's like, oh,
it's
we have this.
it's on our desk daily.
Is that probably you're just gonna like flip all the things we've just done today?
Okay, it's like we've been working for a while. Let's go have some fun, read the code, and see if we can find mistakes. Is that how that
Exactly.
goes?
Keeping moving forward here, reduce our, in the office district, reduce the setback from 30 to 20 to match all of our other employment and commercial districts. So again, trying to be more consistent amongst the code in our employment districts. In the commercial, adding a school and crop agriculture as permitted. The reason for that is, actually that's the reason why we have our audience members here tonight. They're proposing and looking at adding some additional flexibility in our commercial district. We allow for universities, we allow for daycares, and we allow for other things that are, I guess you'd say, very similar to a school, but we don't have school in that category. So it's kind of one of those missing pieces. So as a result, the proposal to add school, the additional crop agriculture that's listed there is actually for another user in the commercial district, which is the greenhouse, De Pere greenhouse that's on Grant Street. Looking at that one as we sort of need to add crop agriculture as a use because that's what a commercial greenhouse is technically. So it's a crop agriculture. So that's how it's defined in the definitions, but we didn't have it as an allowable use in that category.
So out of curiosity, school,
Yep.
explain why they're interested.
Yeah, so if you know the former Jacobs Engineering building, on Lawrence Drive. It's been vacant for about 4 years now. The owner has tried multiple times to find a user to it, but we have a glut of office in this region as a result of United Health Group and others, and the pandemic really kind of flipping office on its head. And so they have not found a appropriate user. They would like to bring in, as part of their proposal, a Montessori school to that location and open up and address the child care crisis in our region, in the state, and in the country here right now by adding a bigger opportunity for Montessori. Not trying to get into specifics of that one in general, but it would be a relocation of existing facility into Pere into that location and expanded. So.
Good.
All right. Moving on to accessory use table. For ease of use, we've listed all the uses that were in the text into the chart. They weren't all there, so we just added them into the chart. So again, a kind of clarification one. I'm going to skip this next red one here so that we can move forward, and then I'll come back to it. We added a section proposing for trucking and transportation terminals. Logistics is just becoming the big thing, and as we do with a lot of e-commerce and a lot of other things, we didn't have a spot that allowed for trucking and transportation terminals. We've sort of used outdoor storage as our location of where we park trailers for a manufacturing facility, but we've sort of been shoehorning in a use that really wasn't fitting. So as a result, we've added a new section for trucking and transportation terminals to more better reflect what we have in our business park and what's coming. But we've also added design standards and requirements to that section. So that's what you saw in the code as well. All right. Oh, wrong one. Some very basic ones. Parking lot screening. We moved wrought iron fencing as a requirement. That was a legacy thing that shouldn't have been in there. Fencing and walls. Clarify that chain link fence does not satisfy the regulation for screening. We've never allowed chain link fence with slats as an allowable screening requirement.
We still have one sticking on George Street. Isn't there one on George Street?
If you don't use it for the required screening, you can.
Oh.
Meaning you can't use it if you do it voluntarily for whatever purpose that you want. That's different than if you have to do it for something else. So it's one of those unique situations.
Yeah.
In the office or in our employment districts, we've added regulation to clarify some of the screening requirements on berms and other things. So again, we just added clarification. We've added directional wall signs as an option for non-street facing in our business parks and in our industrial districts, i.e. when you get a large facility like a Georgia Pacific or a Bellmark or anything else like that, trucks come in, there need some directions to go, and typically we've had requirements of only one wall directional sign. For our purpose, as long as it's not street facing, you can have as many signs as you want. It's for your user and for your benefit, and let's just make it easier for the user at that point. And then we've also, in the commercial districts, corrected the illumination standards for the EMS on pole signs, so electric message center on pole signs. So we've clarified that and added that correction. And then the last kind of policy piece is in Article 3, in 3 and 4, we've allowed design exceptions where it gives planning staff the opportunity to go down 15% of a setback up to a certain level before it becomes a major design exception. Very similar to Alderperson Rash's request and Alderperson Ledvita's request is we have the opportunity to, if we add residential to that category, we've now given those older homes the additional flexibility to potentially do it staff level design exceptions that can help kind of fix those situations again of an older lot expanding. So staff would be requesting to add Article 2 to that design exception category. And again, all the same standards apply to setbacks and all those material choices and all that stuff. So that's where we'd like to move that forward. So the last item that I wanted to talk about is in our code now and in our previous code, the city has never allowed mini storage. So mini storage as defined as a rental unit. We've have some spots in our community where it's close to a mini storage facility, meaning if you look on Millennium Court, those commercial condos where it's an individual condo, but it has a office, it has a bathroom, they have all individual units. So we've never allowed anything less than that. And that was done as a PDD in the early 2000s. And now they're expanding to add more as they've been working through over the past few years. But what's now come up is the now intrigue for what are typically called motor condos. If you've been driven up through Swamico and you see the big, larger buildings, we've had multiple requests to have those in the community. Well, typically that would be considered typically mini storage. We've never allowed that. And so as a result, we've had to say no to it. And we'd like to have a conversation of, is the difference between a mini storage and a contractor warehouse, that's how we typically done it, or in this case, a large toy barn, of an expensive toy barn that is of a condominium status and not a rental status, is that something you want to entertain? Staff can go either way on it. I'd like to have a policy discussion about that. And if you're not really aware of what I'm sort of looking at here, I'm going to show you, these are what I'm sort of talking about. Individual units that have in this case in Swamico, these are all individual units, but they don't have a bathroom or an office. They all share this sort of common office. Material choices that you see, they have brick and stone up, and then they have their metal material. But what are in these? Your RVs, your restored cars, even some of the auto dealers around here store the brand new 2023 Vets and other stuff in these facilities to kind of showcase them to those that have the ability to purchase those. But these are used for that purpose. So they're a higher level end where they're typically under condominium ownership versus a rental ownership. So that's sort of our discussion here tonight.
Pros and cons for a business park?
Well, that would be one of the only places that we would allow them is in our business park. We don't allow mini stores, like I said, anywhere. Right. So the most obvious spots would be the BP1, BP2, and,
right.
and I. There's a challenge because this offers no employment. A situation like this offers no employment.
When we had this stuff, we were searching for employment.
If we're looking for a business park to search for employment. Now, that being said, is with so much automation going on here, you could have a 1.1 million square foot warehouse facility and employ 12 people at a time. At that situation. Or you could have a manufacturing facility that has 25 people on 15 acres. So, I mean, it's the employment numbers aren't as strong as they were years ago because of automation. So that's a bit of a challenge. From an overall dollars and use standpoint, it's very comparable.
Tax generator.
Tax generation, very, very comparable. I'll give you an example. We have a parcel that is.
That was my question. How you come close? Hate to say.
Let's see. I can't pull it up here.
Don't they have something like this? Didn't somebody do something like this in Metropolitan? Or Hobart?
I apologize for not having it diagned that much.
So we run the risk of saying it's okay if you want to build a fancy
So here's my example.
keep expensive toys, but if you just like lower it.
We've been approached.
You don't let that happen.
We own this parcel right here. It was previously under option with Amerilux and then with a different individual. That option has now expired. We've been approached to have about 17 of those motor condos put into here.
And where is that exactly?
This is so here's Heritage,
Yep.
Enterprise, Amerilux is up here. This parcel, so Swan Club is right back here.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh.
yep, now that,
So they're proposing to put 17 of those back there. Again, we would most likely, if we want to keep in the category of contractor yards, or we would most likely require an office and a bathroom in each one of those. I wouldn't want to go back lower than that. But as a result, we've never been able to approve them, so we've never been able to give them guidance on them. So from an overall use standpoint, I look at this as a 1.7 acre site. 1.7. You can probably fit a 20 to 30,000 square foot building on it, plus a parking lot. You're looking at, maybe $1.5 million total value versus 17 motor condos at 200,000 a piece. It's kind of goes both directions. Every lot is specific, but right now we just don't allow it. So.
And you go back to employees again too. I mean, the chances are the business will have some employees,
Yep.
which is what this one was designed for.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine everyone's going to be going AI completely and have AI factories over the next 20 years.
Didn't somebody build one of these up in Hobart by the airport as well? One of these,
These are popping up everywhere. So.
like in the last 6 years or something like that. And I guess the one you're showing up in Swamico, what's the? Obviously, they're all condos, so
Yep.
they're owned by somebody,
Mhm.
either the individual that owns that condo or the condo association owns it. Because they haven't sold it.
Mm-hmm. The ones in Swamico are all sold. I think there's enough toys in this region to fill that up.
Now, another thing was brought up, and I hate to do this for you, Grandpa.
No, that's okay.
Before kind of sidebarring, but there's always that slippery slope. So we have this for the expensive toys and
Yep.
gadgets, and then we have the old warehouses that we see that we don't want, I would think, in business parks or in the downtown. So how do you differentiate?
Right now, our code only says rental. So we haven't approved it because it says rental. In this case, the only reason we've stood on this one a little bit is because we own it. So we wanted to come here first to have that discussion before I continued conversations with anybody who would look at
So,
that site.
Go ahead, Dan. Yep.
Yep, so you got rentals. I have
Yep.
in Lakewood, I rent a 11 by 35 unit there. I mean, that's a rental where it's a storage unit of 60-some units where you rent. So I do get what you're saying, because they wouldn't be allowed a rental and they're not gonna build those types of units as a condo type thing.
No.
That I kind of get, I understand that, I mean, that, because the expense of it and everything's gonna be just, because otherwise, I don't want a bunch of warehouses
Right.
in our downtown or any place, I mean, as to,
I get calls for, do you allow, or I should say, people asking me, where can I build mini storage into Pere? I probably get a call every 2 weeks. And I have to go through the spiel of, we don't allow them, and they say, how can you do that? Well, I said, it's part of our zoning code. But two, mini storage is the easiest way to get into real estate. So that's the reason why they're so popular. It's the easiest way to get into real estate, but the problem is, once they're there, they never go away. So if you're trying to get the highest and best use out of your business park, that isn't the highest and best use.
it's
It's
just not
actually
gonna
one of the
happen.
lowest categories of increment generating use in your business park. Now you see why we question. You know, I was sitting here going.
I got to assume we must have some folks storing stuff somewhere in our business parks.
Well, that's the other one here. So
They're called warehouses.
I'm going to go down.
contractor warehouses.
I'm going to go down here. So we've
like this
allowed.
happening.
So we've allowed these. This is the Storage USA contractor storage buildings. I've had several individuals tell me those aren't being used as contractor storage buildings. They're being
toys.
used as toy barns. So, and there's nothing in our ordinance, there's nothing in the development agreement, there's nothing in there that would prohibit them to do it, because all it takes is somebody to create a separate LLC, and now it's my place of storage of my equipment for my LLC. So,
Well, we talk about employment in the industrial parks, and you go look at some of the warehouses that we have around the area, off of Matthews Drive and things like that, that were subcontracted out to some of our larger paper companies. They might not have any employees that are in there on a daily basis, and the ones that go there might be transferring over from another place just to unload rail cars or fill trucks or whatever it might be. So just because we put a warehouse or a commercial style building into some of these areas, there's no guarantee that there's actually a lot of employment there.
Yep.
Some of those are only staffed when they're needed.
Yep.
So
Georgia Pacific recently vacated this one to go to their larger facility that
Right.
is here, and this one is now available.
right, and it's
So,
big, and it's
250,000 square feet with rail, loading docks in the front. I know it won't last long, but it'll probably be used for a warehouse again.
it'll be used for warehousing, and whoever uses that, you might see 3 or 4 people that associate with that building, and they might not be there all the time. So,
It's part of logistics right now.
right,
Logistics and trucking is just, that's the way it is.
yeah.
I mean, you could also, if we go further, it's valid points, limit the amount of usage for these type of structures, storage structures, if we decide to go that way.
And I think one of my thoughts is, if these are condo type, so the people with the toys are also owning them, with a condo association overseeing that, I think we probably get a structure or a building setup that is better maintained.
Typically, you're going to have a condo association maintaining the grounds at that point.
Right.
Yeah. And in this case, because we own the parcel, we would require that if we went that route.
And I could see the request of having a bathroom facility and something else inside of that, sort of self-contained at that point. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, and we own that property, and I have no problem with agreeing to this, because them 2 pieces of property where the cell tower is going up on the other one have been sitting forever.
Yeah.
As to, Am I in the right area? or
Yep, the
not?
cell tower is going right here.
Area.
Yeah, I'm just saying that property's been sitting there.
A user also proposed those similar type of motor condos on this parcel as well.
Did you ever get any feedback of the businesses out there, what they, or,
No, we typically don't.
I mean, I know you don't, but I mean, hear anything like where we put them out on farther out there in the district park, those,
No, we haven't had those discussions.
Yeah, because I think just across from that, you've got some cold storage places that, yeah, just across Heritage, that are not staffed on a regular basis either. The front one and that back one, I mean, there's people that are there, but it's not like there's, 45 guys working or 45 employees there. There could be 5 in there in a given day.
Sierra Coatings is right here.
Yeah.
A couple others. Yep.
Yeah, they're there, but then I think Well Companies has the cold storage
Yep.
right in that area
Well
someplace.
is up here and then down here, right here.
I guess I would, for me, and I don't know if this is the same thing that Dan was saying, I'd be more inclined to, have a taxable structure sitting up there that's generating some positive tax revenue based on property value versus a vacant lot. But
and if you feel the value is gonna be the same of what a business would go in there, what's the difference on the dollar? I mean, except no employees. I mean, that's the big toss up on it, and I know it's a business park too again. But like you say, a lot of all the operate them, Shopko had their big warehouse out there that was very limited for its size. When they had their distribution for amount of employees there, it wasn't that many employees in that big warehouse.
they have a lot of automation in there too.
Yeah.
Appleton and Oshkosh and other like communities kind of go in the same direction as well. I know we're referencing Hobart and
Well,
Howard and Swamp.
we're one of the very few communities I've ever worked in that says flat out no to mini storage just in general. So, yeah, I would assume that they just would classify that as mini storage.
So this is probably, and Grant, you probably answer this question better too, or Dan, but condominium, it's an appreciable asset. So are we appraising these buildings on a regular basis?
It would be appraised just like everything else that Accurate does for us,
Okay.
and it would be done by Accurate because it's a non-manufacturing structure.
Okay, and so it will be each individual unit will be appraised. I mean, obviously,
Yep.
collectively they're appraised, but so that value could
Somebody puts in 3 bathrooms or whatever.
that could increase the value of that
Exactly.
one.
Yep.
Okay.
It would appraise more based on like a consumer value as opposed to a cash flow based on a rental unit.
Yep.
Because I'm assuming based on the fact that it's an owned property that could, like you're saying, have some more appreciable benefit to it.
Yeah, you've had people in the Swamico one, if you look at them, some of them have a full office, some of them have like a living room and couch in some of them. They have,
Jesus, these are swanky.
Okay.
yeah.
Is that the differentiator for you, Dan, that it's condo, not rental?
That's the only way we've been able to differentiate it in our code right now. But I'm sort of in that same camp as that's that slippery slope of do you go one way or the other? And again, if we're only favoring one segment of the population
We'll get pushback.
because they can, that's one thing. Now that being said,
One
is
and not the other, yeah.
the pushback would only be from the developers who are actually building them, not from the actual users, because you can just go outside of the city limits and find them all over the place.
Yeah.
So it's not quite as truly of an impact as I would say others. So
There again, so you get pushback as to, I mean, there's not going to be a lawsuit that somebody can bring against
No.
you or anything, so somebody's just not happy.
I don't like to hear from people not happy. You want to hear from people not happy?
Well, I'll give you my phone.
Yeah, you
I'll
want-
show you that one.
got a
Oh,
couple.
done.
I got a few of them
I got a
that
couple I just
are
sent.
not happy on our taxes.
Yeah.
So do you,
So I'll just let you have that too.
do you
Got a
want,
budget compiled right now.
so do you want Dan and Peter or whatever to come up with something more?
yeah, this doesn't have to happen. A recommendation tonight.
It's not going to.
Yeah.
So you want to come back with something
How do you know?
like more concrete?
Do you think you run the show here or what?
More meat on the bones? Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Yes, that would be great.
So that's kind of the guidance he's looking
Yeah.
at. So
Yes.
We're going to bring these forward every 3 months to you, so we'll be back. If you're okay with everything else tonight and you want to hold this one, absolutely.
then let's just hold this one.
I'm good with this one.
I need a little more information.
I'm not.
I need to digest this a little bit more.
Chew faster.
Hey, we're here right now and we've had nothing. So to hold off for a little bit more is not that big of a deal.
Yeah, I would like to see,
Consequences.
I'd like to see staff brings, go
Yeah, I
forward,
wanna
I
get-
mean,
come
Bring
up
some
with something.
recommendations.
bring up some
bring
recommendations.
Right.
Standards
We're
and
missing
some
something.
design
Yes,
standards.
And we went from historically no to
Yeah.
maybe in
Maybe.
different form.
Yeah.
You're always,
So I think
you're
that's,
always let's learn
it's
more
worth
kind of
pausing and
guy.
thinking
Yep.
about it a little.
Absolutely. We
Because
can
I was
put,
kind of a no, and I
Then.
maybe think that there's value in it. from
we can
a-
put some example, not a recommendation, but if you were to move forward with it, what our recommended design standards would be, some stipulations to it, we could bring that forward and just give you a sample.
Yeah, I
Thank
think
you.
that'd be good to, as Grant said, take a little bit of time and get some real specifics there.
Why?
Would you say
Okay.
that too, James?
I don't know. I have no idea
didn't-
anymore.
I didn't
It's
hear
not
you.
even worth
Moving
the effort.
on, I hear. I think we're moving on.
What else do we have?
So
Those are all the word.
that's all the
things.
word items here, yes.
Yeah. Now we have the.
So that's item A. So before we go on to item B, if somebody wants to make a recommendation for that minus the.
I'll make a recommendation that council approve the revisions and updates to the zoning ordinance, Municipal Code Chapter 14, all except the one that we just discussed. Nice try. Regarding
Mini warehouse storage.
mini
is
warehouse
whatever you wanna
condo
call them.
units, whatever Kelly puts down.
Yes.
Everyone okay with that?
Yes.
I need a
Second.
second. Motion by me, seconded by Dan. Any additional discussion or comments regarding the words? It appears there is none. That said, all those in favor, say aye.
I,
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Let's go to the map.
All right.
We'll call that the pictures.
Pictures.
Yes. So we went through, when this item was, when the new zoning code was approved by council, there was a constituent who came to the last meeting and presented a variety of questionable thoughts that they had. So we put together and we evaluated. Kelly did a great job of going back through the meeting minutes and trying to track all those, all the comments. And we went back through to compare the constituents' comments versus what the proposed changes were. So we actually did agree with a couple of them, and we also actually bringing a couple more forward here as well that we saw. With 8,000 parcels in the city, we missed a few, 5 to be complete, and then we'll talk about a larger area as well. So as we move forward tonight, so we're looking at on the screen here where the red circles are. So primarily up in the northern part, but we also do have one in the southern part of the community. So on Ash Street, the former, or I should say, it was a former residential piece of property that's now been converted to a WPS facility, or substation for gas transmission. We've elected to move that one towards the from commercial to PI1. It was approvable, it was allowable in the commercial district, but just to be consistent with others for WPS, we put them into the PI. Moving on, North 6th Street is actually a park that was there that we're currently dealing with some other stuff on, but in this case it was R145, moving that to the PI1 as well. Moving into Grant Street, 331 Grant Street, one privately owned parcel still exists, and so instead of PI1, it should be R160. So we tried to keep as much non-spot zoning as possible, but this is in a case in which it should be R160. And then we also, the Abbey just down the road was also labeled as PI1, should have been MX1. So the Abbey is being proposed as well. On the southern part of the community, the very southern edge on Garriman Drive, remained an outlot that is meant to be used for storage or for stormwater storage. So as a result, RM2 to conservancy. And then the big one that you see on here was a conversation that came from Alderperson Ledveda regarding one of those similar requests about a non-conforming structure or building closer to the lot line than what the zoning district allowed. We took a look at what the map that you see in front of you here, and again, we tried to get people in the zoning district that matched their lot lines, their lot width. But that in cases of this one, it probably wasn't the most appropriate option because so many of these people have accessory structures 1 to 2 feet off the lot line or 3 feet off the lot line. So moving this entire area from the R160 and R180, so in the lighter yellow is R180, the lighter yellow that you see on Ridgeway Boulevard is the R160. Moving this entire boundary that you see here to the R145, it clarifies the entire zoning district. It gives us a good block to rezone to a color versus spot coloring all over the place. And it allows a lot of these property owners to be compliant with their accessory structures. So with that one, we're recommending to bring everything that you see into the black outline there into the R145, which matches what's just underneath this map here already and these parcels over here. So those are the 6 changes that we are recommending.
Yeah, actually, quite good, only 6. That is impressive, so. Questions or comments on the zoning map changes?
No.
I'd make a motion to approve the zoning map changes.
I'll second.
Motion by me, seconded by Dean. Any additional discussion and/or comments? Appears there are none. That said, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Is that it for item 8?
Yep.
Appears that way. That was in bold, too. Item 9, discussion about site plans received since February 2023 Plan Commission meeting and review the status of recently approved development projects. Dan?
This is the updated monthly report to you, so it's available for comments and questions.
Okay, everybody. Anyone want to take a kick at any of these? We got Waterview, Bayside Machine, Mac Lane,
As long as it's in the packet, it can be discussed.
Novak Cheese renovation. We've already talked about that last time, so everyone's okay with that, and that's moving ahead. Any additional changes on Novak Cheese?
Well, again, we did talk about the design exception that was granted here, so they are moving forward with that design.
They are moving forward, okay,
Yep.
so they are good with that. I'm not sure the other ones we had much issues with. I'm looking at the Taco Bell thing. Just kidding, everyone, you can get your eyes on this before I close this out.
Can we make that Starbucks
Did Starbucks,
I'm just.
did that start?
They're serving coffee already.
Yeah. they've been-
No, this is Sharing Road one.
I know which one he's talking about. They live out there.
So they're just standing there in a little
Yeah,
stand
they
outside
got
or something, or what? Like a
already. They gotta make money while they're
Starbucks
building.
truck?
I was telling if it gets cold, just warm up your coffee.
While they're building, they gotta make money, you know, come on.
Chicago Street Pub and Swan Club, new patio addition, looking very impressive.
Nice inside and out.
Yeah, outside's still in progress, right? If I go by there correctly. I think everyone's seen the Malva Cultural Center truck driveway modification. And then the backside of Malva, is that like the entryway kind of
Yeah.
where the school
The
was?
canopy is being
right?
installed right now.
On Wisconsin Street side, yeah. So that's new, that's pretty impressive.
So they're right on target.
They're right on target for what?
Completion.
Oh, so it'll be done in May?
July. 2023 is all I remember.
Oh,
Fall of 20.
The fencing says May 2020 or summer
Summer
2023.
but, well, we're aware of the, yeah, they're right on their new target, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
2023.
We're just chuckling here a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Any questions or comments?
No.
All right, thank you very much. And again, we appreciate this. These updates are
Yes.
extremely helpful.
Yes, they are.
Hate to tell you, but for some of these, that's the coolest part of the whole package, so.
We're working closer towards the actual virtual version of this as well, so we're working closer. So
Don't just say it, you mean it? Is that gonna
we're
happen?
getting there. We have to design a whole new part of the webpage, so.
Oh, awesome. I think that's it then. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Oh, I'll second.
Thank you, Brenda. Motion,
I was sitting back.
I was going to sit back, yell and crow.
What are you doing?
too much fun for anybody? Want to give this up? All
We're all
right.
still looking.
Kelly's
at the
still
last
typing. I wanted
recording.
to.
Brenda. Motion by me, thankfully seconded by Brenda to adjourn. That said, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Thanks for coming tonight, folks.